So the next thing we want to look at is the structure of the human being. And so the human being can be nothing other than a microcosm of the macrocosm. We hear that a lot in a really abstract way. But what it really means is that the human being has to be constructed out of the manifest levels of the Godhead spread throughout the universe that take on all these different planes that we hear about. So, for instance, there are different levels of a human being. In the esoteric tradition, we'll talk about a human physical body. That's related to the earth itself. It's what in India, in Sanskrit, they refer to as the sheath made of food. That's the literal name in Sanskrit for the physical body, the sheath made of food, because we take in physical substance, we put it into a field of force that is the outline of our body, and then it fills it out with physical substance. So the physical body is of the same nature as the earth. We draw the substance from the earth, we give it back at death. Then we have the level of life energy, that's called chi, ki, prana in the east, or the etheric in the west, from the Greek term for life energy. But basically it's pure life force. This is like the life energy of the Godhead moving through the world. We take a small detachment of that life energy and individualize it to become our life body during our incarnation. It's related to the element of water in physical elements. Then we have our consciousness body, which includes both our emotional and mental function. Sometimes this is referred to generally as the astral, or sometimes it's broken down to being the emotional and mental body, which can also be referred to as the lower and upper astral. But there are all just various ways to break it apart. But essentially it's the consciousness field of God that we bring into ourselves as an individualized astral body. And that emotion and mind aspect is related to the element of air as another crystallization of the same force, but now into concrete physical matter outside of us. And then our self-awareness, our I am presence, is related to fire. This is what the Rosicrucians refer to as the ego with a capital E. But it's important to understand that when they say that, they don't mean the ego of psychology. It's not your little ego. This is your I am presence. This is your divine spark of being self-aware. So that's the whole thing through the Jewish Kabbalistic mysteries of the burning bush, I am the I am, the 7 I am sayings of the Christ in the Gospel of John, etc. It's all about that development of pure self-awareness. Why would it be linked to fire? Because that's the pure spark of the fire, the flame from the ocean of fire of the Godhead that we have inside of us. And so to understand this type of basic structure of the human being, that every part of ourselves is a detachment from part of the levels of God that make the levels of the world outside of us, that we individualize to become a self-aware separate being. So that's an absolutely fundamental part of understanding what being a microcosm of a macrocosm is. So then when we go through a process of initiation, initiation is really a process of becoming aware of who am I, why am I here, where do I come from, and how do I develop a process by which I can become more self-aware and accelerate my process of development. Along the path of initiation, as you begin to understand processes other people don't understand, there can be the temptation to use that knowledge to manipulate other people, or to manipulate all types of things. Let's say you understand psychology and somebody else doesn't. You can manipulate them with all types of things in neurolinguistic programming and things of that kind. What words do you use? What tonality do you use? How do you present the information? You can manipulate them all over the place. And so in Rosicrucianism, there's a very strong rule that all the powers and understandings gained on the path will be put to the service of other people. And so that's like the first rule in Rosicrucianism. Otherwise, as you develop the abilities, you will get that temptation of, well, I could get what I want right now because they don't understand this process, but I do. So initiation and inner alchemy. Alchemy has to do with the transformation of something from a base state to a higher state. But there's an important thing that's hidden in that, which is that the base state has to exist first. You're turning lead into gold, but there had to be the lead there first to create the gold. So this means that hidden within, all types of lower structures are the seed of its full fruition, very much like the classical illustration of the caterpillar and the butterfly. You don't know looking at the caterpillar that over time its entire structure has laid within it the ability to become a winged butterfly. But it's the exact same thing in the human being, which is why they depicted the higher spiritual bodies of the human being as always being with wings, traveling through the spiritual worlds. So we develop the physical body. We develop the body of life force. We develop our consciousness. But then we come to the point of developing our self-awareness, the I am presence. And that's where we are today. Human beings have developed this, and now we're at this critical point of developing the I am self-awareness, which the Rosicrucians see as being the true message of Christianity. So when they try to understand this whole mystery of what is the Christ in the early Christian centuries, there was a wonderful text written by one of the great early church fathers in Egypt, whose name was Origen. And Origen wrote a book called On First Principles. And in the book On First Principles, he gives a very simple and beautiful description of how can we understand what the Christ being is. The Christ being is a being emanated from the Godhead that has all the qualities of the Godhead in a unified form, but reduced in scale to where human beings can directly interact with this being. Because it was understood originally that the Godhead is everything. The Godhead is literally everything everywhere. But you take those qualities and you create a being that has that at the macrocosmic level, and that was understood to be the Christ being. And then the human being was actually the microcosm of that emanated Godhead. We are the crown of creation, etc. And so what this means in the early Christian centuries is they understood the Christ as being of the exact same nature as the human being. The Christ is almost a kind of oversoul of all human beings at the macrocosmic level. We all connect to the Christ being. And one of the things that Rosicrucians lament is that this impulse came in from lower states of consciousness trying to understand the teachings in Christianity that then somehow made Christianity something that was a separate sect, separate from other sects, which was not the initial concept. The initial concept is that the Christ being is the actual higher consciousness aspect that is a living being at a higher macrocosmic level that every human being is connected to. It's not something for one particular set-aside group of people. But from the perspective of a Rosicrucian, you can find people that are more deeply connected to Christ than someone that says they're Christian, who are Buddhist, Hindus, whatever. It has to do with their illumination of consciousness and what they're resonant with. And so it's a thing of this actual manifestation of the Godhead at a higher level that has all the qualities of the Godhead so we can interact with it, reduced in scale. So this I am self-awareness is something that is related to the entire Christ mystery, building through the Jewish text and then into the esoteric Christian text. So again, the 7 I am sayings of the book of John are understood by the Rosicrucians not to be that you have to pledge some type of loyalty to Jesus Christ as a kind of master in order to not be tortured or to die forever, but rather it's a matter of the I am is the way and the light. The I am is the resurrection and the life. That it's that spark of the divine inside of us that's of the exact same nature as the Christ being. There is no separation between them. They're both emanation from the same ocean of fire. That's the consciousness of God. That's the essence of all of this. And that's the stage we're at today. So the Rosicrucians see this as the point we're at where we have to illuminate our awareness, to actually illuminate that spark. And when we actually pass through this stage at a higher level, we first become more deeply self-aware, but then we actually become aware in a transpersonal way. So not all of ourselves is so focused. But first it starts with focus on the self. We'll get to that in a moment. Now the inner alchemy of this is that once we have developed that fire, and this is represented in the esoteric Christian tradition as the flame above the head of the disciples at Pentecost. It's a literal flame that ignites a spiritual structure that moves in a vertical axis through the human body. And at this energy center above the human head, it illuminates to be the center of the Holy Spirit within Christian depictions. But I've worked with people from many other religions that know all about this first center above the head and its ignition into higher consciousness. This is a particular way it can be presented in the Western understanding. So as we develop that aspect of ourselves that's of the same nature as the Christ, same nature as the Godhead, can now illuminate with light and transform with the fire the lower bodies. That means that then we can train our I am spiritual self-awareness to actually transform our consciousness to a higher level. It's an alchemical transformation of the consciousness to become something different of a higher nature. And then it can then transform our entire body of life force, the entire etheric body, chi, ki, prana, to a higher level. And then it can actually transform the physical body. That's what in esoteric Christianity is referred to as the resurrection body of the Christ after the crucifixion. In modern metaphysical terms, we primarily refer to it as the full light body. So the process of self-observation is fundamental In just about all classical initiation traditions, without self-observation, you can't begin to crystallize out this level of awareness. And you can't start changing your detrimental psychological patterns of how you think and how you speak and how you interact with people and how you feel internally to something that's more beneficial. Now, over time, this develops to a higher level, to where your awareness actually becomes transpersonal, so that you're not completely focused on yourself, but rather you can take in the consciousness states of more and more people.